And now, you're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports Podcast. I am here tonight, as per usual, with my co-host Carlos to discuss what was not a usual result for the Rowdies lately. Unfortunately, we will get all to that in a bit. But Carlos, we usually start with the pleasantries, and we're not going to skip over that this week, even though I might want to skip this whole recording and maybe get to the preview. But
Sure.
Let's do what we usually do. Let's start where we usually start. How are you?
James, I'm doing all right. Have some family staying over here for the week, which, by the way, includes their two dogs, which is one really old dog and one really young yappy dog. So there's a lot of noise in my house right now. And I'm trying to cover my mic from that angle, so it's just my voice. But I cannot guarantee that there won't be a little dog barking every 5 minutes. We'll see what happens. But we're going to get through the episode. Day's been good. Week's been good. Been studying for the LSAT. Lots of fun stuff. Not really. I have a little piece in our extra time segment that I'll hint at now, just because it's really, really cool. I have a peer of mine in my university is playing on an NPSL team, and he scored the equalizer in stoppage time for Annapolis Blues this weekend. And that was really, really fun to watch because that took them to penalties where they won the conference final over there. I don't really know how NPSL playoffs are structured, but I just know they won their conference final, and now they're going on to like the regional final, the regional playoffs or whatever. That was really cool to watch. And I'll mention a little bit more about that later just because it's applicable to the wider world of soccer in this country. But yeah, it's been a pretty decent weekend other than what you hinted at. Passed by the watch party in downtown Tampa. There's going to be a better watch party this weekend. And yeah, here we are. It's Tuesday night. James, what's going on in your life on this fine Tuesday evening?
Yeah, well, a couple of other things that I'm going to get to in the extra time, including a gigantic tournament, which starts this Thursday at about 3 a.m. our time. But we're going to get to all of that later. Let's go now to the thing, though, that you and I have been dancing around for a little bit. The Rowdies lost this past weekend, unfortunately. They went away to Alabama and lost their first game in months, 1-0 to Birmingham Legion. In our own standings, no one got any points because we all picked either a win or a draw, and that's not how it turned out. So nobody got any points. The guest spot is still on 15. Eureka and I are still on 14. Carlos, you are on 13. But we have another chance to get points, and hopefully all of us will this weekend as we preview another away game this week versus Indy 11. However, because we're previewing Indy 11, it means that we have to bring up a watch party coming up this weekend for Indy 11. So the next RBLR Rowdies watch party will be this Saturday. If you have not heard us talk about it before, where have you been? But yes, we are hosting that again. It will be at Berry House again off of the Ybor Strip. And there will be a halftime swag giveaway. There are beer pitcher specials. If you don't know about exactly which beer pitcher specials we have out there, our producer Eureka is valiantly putting all of them onto our Twitter, out in the Twitterverse on our account. So please go check those out if you're interested. Berry House does have very good beer. And yeah, we will start the pregame show live roughly around 6:15. The game actually kicks off at 7. And please do show up. It's going to be a good time. We had a great time the first one, and we want to make this one even bigger so we can make it a regular thing. Now, with all of that said, we do have to preview the game, so we'll get to that later. But, Carlos, you and I need to start this show where we usually do, again, with the review. So, please do our quick little recap of the Birmingham Legion game.
James, there was certainly a game played. I think we can stop there. No, I'm joking. Here was the starting lineup for your Tampa Bay Rowdies on that fine Saturday evening in Birmingham, Alabama, a trip that I was going to make, but I'm actually pretty glad I didn't. Connor Sparrow in net, Antley, Lasso, Guillen making up that back line, kind of reverting to a line of 3 in Stuart Dobson's interim head coaching debut. Sebastian Dalgaard, Jordan Doherty, Ekra, Lakava, and Armin made up the midfield unit, with Dalgaard and Armin playing as a sort of wingback, outside midfield hybrid positions that we've grown accustomed to under Neil Collins' reign. We also had JJ Williams and Cal Jennings up top, that duo that I admittedly said I was pretty excited to watch get regular playing time together. Hopefully it pans out better than it did this particular evening. The first half was relatively back and forth. I wouldn't say there was a ton of chances for either team, but there were spells of possessions for both teams. It was in the second half that the Legion were able to score pretty early off of a really, really long ball, where our back line, again, kind of had a weird moment of just falling asleep. I thought it was offsides because I'm forgetting the Birmingham Legion player who got the assist, James. But he had so much space that, in my mind, the only reason he could have had that much space was because he was offsides. He was not, at least that was the judgment of the official. I didn't even go back and check. And ultimately, the guy I told you, James, last week, remember? The guy said, oh my goodness, I hope if anybody scores from Birmingham, I hope it's not this guy. Of course he did. Enzo Martinez got on the score sheet.
Yep.
That loser put Birmingham Legion up 1-0, and that was it. That was it. Enzo Martinez was the guy that sealed the deal for Birmingham Legion against the Tampa Bay Rowdies, who, again, were on a really, really long unbeaten streak, 12 games unbeaten. This game would have made it 13, but again, a 1-goal difference ended that streak. James, lots to talk about. We'll get to this game against Indy 11 here in a little bit. A couple storylines there, obviously, as you might recall, a particular Rowdies legend that kind of plays over there right now still. So that'll be fun. But before we get into any of that, let's at least pretend to break down this Birmingham game. There's some stuff to talk about. Honestly, I'm at a loss for what happened with our offense in this particular evening. We held possession for a decent amount of the first half. You noted the first half of the first half. How did that go for us? What did you see in that first half? Because, again, I saw possession. I saw decent ball movement. It's not like we weren't doing anything right. We were getting the ball up the field. It's like we were missing, we weren't connecting on that second to last pass, if that makes any sense. The key pass to kind of get us into the danger zone never really played out. We were always overplaying it, or the pass was getting cut off. Birmingham was doing a great job of kind of cutting off our lanes in the final third. But it just seemed like that last pass wasn't really getting to who it needed to get to. We held possession. We were moving the ball decently. But very much nothing going for us in that offensive side of things. It seemed very discouraging. I think by the second half, you could see the players kind of giving into that discouragement. What did you see in that first half? Anything specific? How'd that go? How did you see that first half of the first half go, I guess?
Yeah, I think that in the first half of the first half, if we want to break it down that way, and that's where you and I were starting here, because I think that the Rowdies did control possession for the most part.
Sure.
As you said, I think that they kind of lined up in the shape that we've been used to. They had roughly 4 at the back, or depending on the situation, they would change it up and get someone back there a little bit deeper. But it was obviously dependent on what team had the ball and where the ball was. I thought that the Rowdies were doing pretty well in terms of their movement. I thought that the Rowdies were doing pretty well in terms of their creation. What I really had a problem with ultimately was something you already said. It was that final ball. I think that over the course of the game, I counted maybe 6 or 7 of these, but in the first 20 to 25 minutes, give or take, I think that the Rowdies did this 4 times where ultimately it got to Jake Araman was one who got one. I know that Cal Jennings, I think, had 2 of them, and I think JJ Williams had the other one. I don't have the timestamps on here, but I remember specifically Jake Araman got the ball in a great position. And then when he cut the ball back, he cut it back to no one. And I remember that there were another 2 opportunities. Like I said, they got Cal Jennings on the ball in each of these. So Cal Jennings, I believe, was in the close to the box, close to the D at the top of the box there. And on the right was Sebastian Dalgaard, open in space. Sebastian Dalgaard had a lot of good movement in here. Jake Araman did too, but I think Sebastian Dalgaard is the one who got higher with it. Anyway, He was open in space. All somebody needed to do was find his feet, and then he could either take a quick shot or cut it back, maybe to JJ Williams or to Cal Jennings himself. Both of those times, Cal Jennings just did not find his feet. It was super weird, honestly. It was like just a quick lapse in concentration.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that they're on the right page, and
Yeah.
then suddenly from one motion to the next, it's like, oh, it's gone. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, this happened, like I said, I think 4 times in those first 20 minutes, and then it happens a couple more times over the course of the game. I think Cal Jennings had another one, unfortunately. But yeah, there were really good positions, really good little buildup, and then it was just that final ball kind of played to no one, and ultimately Birmingham Legion got away with it and got to often break down our end. So ultimately they changed it up a little bit after those 25-ish minutes. They adapted themselves just slightly, but then it was Birmingham Legion's chance to take over the possession for the rest of the first half, and they did that. They ultimately came back at us several times, and in pretty quick succession had a couple of really good chances.
Yeah.
I know the first one that I noted in the game, like, that I needed to write down to remember for later, was now in the 25th minute, when Matthew Corcoran, a very good young player, he hadn't been playing a ton recently, and that was in our preview article, helpful from our guest writer, Kaylor Hodges. But yeah, he was stepping back into this game after a little spell out. And then, he had a couple of nervy moments for sure, especially on the defensive side. But out of nowhere, he kind of just goes on this mazy run. Like, I guess it wasn't that mazy. He wasn't dribbling past 2 or 3 people at a time. But yeah, he was able to get from close to their half up to the D at our box. And he just got a good shot past Jan Ekra. And luckily, Connor Sparrow was there to make that save. But if not, that was just going to be some really weird and really good goal from a 17-year-old kid. Not something that we would expect from the Rowdies. And then Juan Agudelo had another pretty good shot, like 2 or 3 minutes later. I think that there was another one roughly in the 30th or the 31st minute, somewhere along those lines. So they're, starting to rack up these shots a little bit. And the Rowdies were hanging on mostly, I think, by Connor Sparrow's helping. We've seen that a couple times in the past couple games, but yeah, it was just weird that we were kind of not able to react to these little changes. And I think that it was just a little static ultimately. I think that our pressing movements were not always the best when we were out of possession and Birmingham Legion had the ball starting back closer to their goal. We did not execute those with the precision that I think that we have seen the Rowdies execute those recently. And then, unfortunately, we were kind of getting carved up a little bit in the midfield because, that weird run by Matthew Corcoran, not someone who's known for dribbling or his, running with the ball or anything like that. But yeah, he goes on this long run, like I said, and that turned out pretty well.
Yeah.
But then the other subsequent shots after that. So yeah, where do you think if you had that, like, was it kind of, what do you put that down to, I guess, is my question. And what do you think was the issue as we kind of got on through that first 45 minutes?
It's a good question because I'm not going to, I'll save my thoughts on, the coaching situation for in a couple of questions. But like, if you look at that first half, it's really just not particularly indicative of how the Rowdies have been playing during this crazy streak. So it's not like it, if you're doing that, if you're playing well over a course of 10 to 12 games, like back to back to back to back to back to back, et cetera, you have a good team, right? You're not just winning games because they're flukes or anything. You're putting together good performances, and even when they're not playing particularly well, you're getting out some, gritting out some wins. And in this particular half, it just wasn't the same team from those last 12 games. I don't know. Maybe you can say you could compare it to like the first half of the Loudoun or the Las Vegas game, but even in the Las Vegas game. And I think in the Loudoun game, we scored in the first half at least. We didn't play particularly great. And in this game, it's not even like we played bad. There just wasn't anything being created offensively. And like you said, in the midfield, there was some questions to be asked. Again, like you said, with Corcoran, very random player to have that much space. And I mean, again, if you're a professional soccer player, which this kid is, if you have that much space, you're going to take it. And you're going to find a nice little open lane to shoot. And he did. Luckily, it wasn't a particularly great shot. And Connor Sparrow was there. But there was, I mean, that was just one example of more than a few moments in that first half where Birmingham, like you said, was able not even, I wouldn't even say carve up the midfield. They just ran. Like they just kind of ran straight, right? There was a lot of space and it was very strange. I don't know what was going on in that sense. It's not like we changed up too much formation wise. It's kind of what we've been running with at multiple points throughout the season. I mean, the starting midfielders, like I mentioned earlier, we had Ekra, Doherty in there. Lacava was kind of in a weird kind of like free roam central attacking central mid role, which was interesting. That was maybe the only change, quote unquote, I saw, I guess. We also didn't have Charlie Dennis starting, which might have thrown a couple things off because that hadn't happened in a while. But Lacava kind of starting in that role was a little bit different. I'm not sure if like I can say like, you know, Lacava started and that's why there's so much space. That's why we were kind of all over the place. You hear the dogs. Remember what I was saying? Anyway, in short, the Rowdies were not playing like dogs. You know what I'm saying? The Rowdies were playing like slow baby kittens in the midfield. And Birmingham were on the prowl. Like, I don't know, name some sort of predator. I can't think of any Nat Geo documentary. I'm not in that zone right now. But Birmingham sensed that off the bat, and they knew they had a chance. Again, when you have a 17-year-old kid sensing that, taking that space, it's a bad sign because then you have all these other professionals. You have Enzo Martinez, who's more than capable. Robert Kasim, fantastic player. Agadello, a decent striker in his own right. Tyler Pasher is a fantastic attacking midfield. I mean, Birmingham has a great team. Yeah. Their standings their position on the table is not indicative of the kind of roster they have. They should be, I think, pretty clearly top 3. They're not playing like it throughout the season, but I didn't even think they played like it against us, really. That's the frustrating part. I mean, they didn't play like the team they have. They just took advantage of us not playing well. The question, like you asked, I kind of just danced around the question for a good 3 minutes here. Like the question was why? I'm not sure. I mean, eventually, like again, we were at a 12-game unbeaten streak. Eventually, you're gonna have to lose, right? And you're gonna have bad performances. We were just slow on this particular evening. I don't think there's much else to it. We can again, we'll talk about the coaching thing in a second. But honestly, I think this was just a game where we came out sluggish, and that was it. We started off too slow, and by the time we got into the game, it was too late. Like, I think about it. Like, it's not like, I don't know. It's not like going to Louisville, right? Where Louisville's like this packed stadium, pretty loud. You're not going to Phoenix when Phoenix was kind of at its peak a couple of years ago in terms of like, you know, quality and insane attendance. And you're not really going in Birmingham. You're going to a pretty cavernous stadium. There's not a ton of people there, and it's not like it's an intimidating atmosphere. There's not really a ton of external factors I can point to and say it's like, oh, like, you know, this is why we played bad. Playing on a decent field. You're not playing on a baseball stadium field. Like, it was just a weird game. We were slow, and again, I think that's kind of it. By the time we got into the game, it was too late. You know, we weren't in the game. We never really were. It was just a weird game, and it just felt like static. That's it. Slow, sluggish. Am I particularly worried? Like, not really, not yet. We just were on this insane unbeaten streak where we hadn't lost since the Open Cup game against Houston, which feels like a year ago. So I'm fine taking a loss. It's concerning-ish that it happens like that, where we're just that slow and that kind of like not really into it. But at the end of the day, a loss is a loss away. It's fine. It's not like it's a game we should have won per se. As long as we win the games we're supposed to win, we'll be all right. But we got to, avoid having these types of performances in the future. But again, I mean, it's still a long season. I wouldn't be surprised if we have one more like this. Again, I feel like I'm starting to, like, in my mind, fade into the coaching subject. But again, I'm gonna try and save that until you prompt that question, James, because we're getting there.
Yeah, well, before we do that, let's just talk about the second half here.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, the goal was that's not a goal that the Rowdies should be giving up, for one thing, but it's not a goal that I think the Rowdies have given up in a long time.
No.
For anyone
Yeah.
who missed it, it was just from the goalkeeper. He was
Mm-hmm.
able to pass it around for a little bit in the back until Cal Jennings kind of, you know, slowly stepped to him to put him under a little bit of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So he decided, all right, I'm going to hit this. And he hit it long, but the player has the ball coming over his shoulder and it falls to Prosper Kasim. And he has a beautiful first touch. And yeah, that touch leads him straight into space.
Yeah.
He's allowed to go, you know, I mean, allowed. There's nobody around him to stop him at that point. He just leads himself straight into space, and he cuts it back across the goal. And as you said, there is Enzo Martinez. They're just ready to pounce.
Mm-hmm.
It was not a goal that the Rowdies have given up, as I said, and it was so easy. That's the other thing. It was just so easy. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that was really disappointing.
Mm-hmm. It was so I'm looking back at that goal. It's Jake Arman that's chasing down why am I forgetting? It's Jake Arman that's chasing down Kasim on the wing. Like you said, crazy nice touch. My question is on this particular goal, what was Guillen doing?
Yeah, right. I wish
Like,
that we had the angle that showed us where that started.
yeah, I mean, you can briefly see kind of where he is when the pass is made. Looking back at it, he's like he's when Van Okel makes that long ball from the Birmingham box, Guillen is in Birmingham's half. By the way, like he's in Birmingham's half, marking some midfielder who I can't make out from this clip. But Guillen's in Birmingham's half, marking a Birmingham midfielder, which I guess is like not all that uncommon when the goalie has the ball that far back in his own half. But I feel like you have to be a little bit more conscious of the fact that a long ball like this can be coming with the team as rapid as Birmingham, especially with a guy like Kasim who can make those long runs. And again, bring down that ball pretty easily into space. Next thing you know, easy goal for Enzo Martinez. This feels like something that should have been picked up like in film before, going to Birmingham. Being aware of these long balls by anybody, by the midfield, by the back line, towards Kasim in particular. But yeah, again, it's happened before where we just fall asleep in the back line.
Yep.
This particular form of conceding the goal is a little bit more frustrating because it's like extra avoidable in that someone should have seen it coming. Maybe, I don't know. I really don't know. Like, there's a mix of Armin being a little slow to react from what I see, and Guillen maybe being a little bit out of position. I don't know. I don't see a situation where when you're defending against a team that can play like that, and play that long ball, I don't see a situation where Guillen should be in Birmingham's half, with the possibility of Kasim making a run on his side of the field. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm overthinking it there.
No, I'm leaning towards you.
Yeah, I just like I feel like maybe Armin should have been kind of where Guillen is, and Guillen should be a lot deeper, kind of lined up with his other two main center backs,
Right.
on the night, which were again Lasso and Antley playing in that more defensive role. Long-winded way of saying that was a frustrating goal. Super avoidable. We didn't particularly. Why am I using that word so much? Particularly, we didn't really deserve to win the game, right? But I don't think Birmingham did that much to win it either. I felt like a justifiable result was a draw. 0-0, boring game. Birmingham didn't have much going for them other than us not playing well.
Right.
And they didn't do too much either. By the time they had like that shot that, dinged off the crossbar towards the end of the game, we were kind of in garbage time. Rowdies are all pushing up already looking for the equalizer. They just weren't doing much either. So it's especially frustrating because we should have gotten out of there at least with a point. It is what it is, James. Honestly, like I'm not too bummed out about losing a game after 12 unbeaten or whatever. But I mean, you're not going to be happy to lose either.
Right,
So,
exactly. Sure.
especially a game where it's super avoidable. Again, we said Birmingham's a really good team, so it wouldn't have been surprising to lose, and it's not too surprising. But having watched the full game and seeing how Birmingham didn't really do too much, and that didn't really merit the win either, it's a little frustrating not walk out of there at least with a point. What a interesting stadium, by the way. I like the stadium. I just wish they drew more of a crowd, so it's not so cavernous.
I was saying that when I was watching it. I was saying pretty much the exact same thing. I
Yeah.
went there for our season opener last year in 2022. It's in a great area. It's downtown Birmingham. It's really cool. There's a lot of good stuff around it.
No.
But it's unfortunately much too big for the crowds that they're going to draw, and that's just the nature of it. But anyway, Carlos, I think that we've kind of covered as much as the first half and the second half are really going to give us here.
Yeah. Wait, let me give you one more stat just to kind of summarize where we were on this particular night. The first half, we mentioned that we actually had a pretty good spell of possession. We could have created stuff. We were outshot 5-1 in the first half, by the way. And that one shot wasn't on target. It was sky high. In the second half, we had 2 shots on target. Those were only shots on target the whole game, obviously. And they were both outside the box, just kind of Hail Marys-esque plays, right? It was Jake Arman kind of half volleying a shot that bounced out to him off of a corner. It was actually really well done. So kudos to him. That ended up being a much better shot than I thought it was going to be, but it's never really going in unless you're Messi, who apparently is playing in the US now. And who else was it? It was Charlie Dennis, who was dribbling up out of nowhere and just ripped a shot similar to Corcoran in the first half. Not much there, and that was it. That was all we created. Those were only 2 shots. So I think I kind of summarized where we were on this particular game. Nowhere. We were lost. I mean, we didn't create anything. I'm glad we at least got a couple of shots on target to stat pad, and I'm not here saying we didn't get a single shot off, but I just wanted to throw in those numbers there before we move on. That kind of summarizes where we're at. Outshot, outplayed. Birmingham had one more big chance than we did according to FOTMob, but even then they didn't do much, and it's especially frustrating to know a team beat you not playing their best either.
Yeah, I just okay, let's get into it. So, Carlos, we've talked about kind of maybe a lack of intensity. Honestly, maybe it's down to the fact that there were so few fans overall in the size of the stadium. I don't know. I don't want to knock Birmingham too much because I think they're, a good club, and I think that they do have a good fan base. It's just hard to fill that big of a friggin' stadium,
Yeah.
But let's get into it. Inevitably, whether anyone should be considering this or not, because we don't know what the locker room looks like. But questions are going to turn to the coaching here, because Stuart Dobson was the man in charge for the night as Neil Collins and John Stead headed across the Atlantic to their native Britain. So I guess it's Stuart Dobson's native Britain as well. But regardless, he has been here for however long. He knows the system. He knows the players. He knows what motivates them and what shouldn't, all that kind of stuff. All of this to say, where do you fall on that?
So I think it's a valid question to bring up because, as a Rowdies podcast, it's kind of what we do is we like to talk about what the Rowdies fans are talking about. And obviously that was it's inevitable that question would be brought up, right? We just had one of the best coaches, maybe the best coach of our modern history, leave to England and take up a really good job offer over there. And now we're left with this kind of hole that's to be filled by an interim head coach, at least right now he's an interim head coach in Stuart Dobson, who's been here for a long time. So I think I again, valid question to bring up. I don't think it's like his fault, in short. Like, I don't think it's his fault. I don't think he did anything wrong with the lineup. My only question would have been why LaCava instead of Charlie Dennis,
A
kind of
little
like
weird,
that
but yeah.
attacking mid unit, especially with LaCava having been playing pretty well, kind of in the wing roles and striker.
And I will say, I don't think he did a great job in this role, but
Yeah, I know.
that's fair.
Yeah, I hope. In terms of questionable decisions, that was pretty much it, and I don't think that's it's a valiant experiment because LaCava is that kind of player that should be able to play pretty well in that position. But he didn't. That's fine. Charlie Dennis, maybe I don't know. Maybe Charlie Dennis had a little bit of an injury. We don't really know. Maybe that's why he didn't play the full 90. But that being said, nothing else was particularly out of the ordinary. Like, it was pretty much the Neil Collins system continued,
Right.
which was what we expected. It's not like, we expected the assistant coach, Stuart Dobson, to come here and just implement like a totally new play style. If you've seen any of the season 3 of Ted Lasso, it's not like he was going to pull a Ted Lasso and he comes in and just changes it to a total football, like they called it. And they're just totally switching up the system midway through the season. It
No,
worked in
Stuart
this.
Dobson's
Yeah.
option would be to put multiple goalkeepers out there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not going to be like that, and obviously it works in the show. It's not going to work in real life. It's totally switch everything up, especially with a new quote unquote coach. So, I mean, it was everything we expected in terms of the lineup. Again, maybe just the LaCava thing, the play style, the formation. It was everything we expected. So it's not really like we can point to that and say like, LaCava starting instead of Charlie Dennis was like the reason we played terribly, the reason why we were so slow. Like, that doesn't make any sense. If you just think about it logically, it doesn't make any sense. I just think that this team is very mortal and human, like every other team.
Yeah.
And is not so, immune to a major change like that halfway through the season. It's not normal. Like, players aren't meant to deal with that and meant to adjust as naturally as they did against Oakland. That's not how it's going to work. And of course, there's going to be kind of some bumpy roads ahead. I didn't expect us to just go on and go another 12 games unbeaten after we had that big of a change.
But it would have been nice.
It would have been great. Oh, yeah, it would have been fantastic. But Stuart Dobson is not. I don't think he's to blame. He really just continued the Neil Collins system as expected. I don't know. Like, it's not like we can say like, Stuart Dobson in particular is at fault. It's just our team is human. And I think that's going to be my excuse for tonight. I always have an excuse for why we played bad. And then, sometimes I kind of just make them up, like, the baseball field or, I don't know. I just make things up. But this particular night, I genuinely just think we should all take a minute to consider how big of a change this was halfway through the season. How out of nowhere it was, too. I think Neil Collins even mentioned how out of nowhere the move was. So if it was out of nowhere for him, imagine for the players, for the club, for fans. Like, it's not a usual thing. So it's expected that these performances would happen. I hope we can adjust quickly. But, like, what else can I say about it, James? Yeah, I mean, you know what I'm saying. I would just be kind of going in circles if I go on. Like, we're human. It happens. Again, we were just on a 12-game unbeaten streak, so a loss was bound to happen eventually. A bad performance was bound to happen eventually. It's not really surprising that that bad performance comes when a major change like, Stuart Dobson taking over the team from Neil Collins happens. Not surprising to me, honestly.
Nope, I tend to agree. Like, I guess we usually do, but I'm certainly gonna wait to be like, we got to get a new coach in here now.
Yeah,
Whatever. Like, I think that we can afford to take our time. It's not going to be that big of a deal, and I do think that the team will turn things around regardless of how long that takes. Anyway, so
this is the weird blessing about kind of the American sport setup in that we have a playoff system, right? The regular season doesn't really mean anything in the United States for whatever reason.
As long as you get it.
As long as you we could lose like 6, 7 straight and probably still be fine to get in the playoffs and still have I'm going to say the best roster in the league. Like, as long as we're playing well towards the end of the season, like I'm not going to go that far and say I'm totally fine if we lose the next 4 or 5 games. But I think Stuart Dobson deserves a little bit of cushion in terms of when it's worth judging him, or at least critiquing his decisions at this point in the season. Because as of now, I don't think he made many decisions. It was really just a continuation of the Collins system. So I think it comes down to the intangibles, the things that you can't really put a number on. You can't really track them with stats. The best coach in our history left halfway through the season. It happens. Well, no, that's my point. Is it doesn't happen, right? So the losses are expected. And again, I think like you put it well. He deserves some time before we kind of critique him or judge the performances. He definitely deserves at least a few games to really take over the head coaching role and adapt and become the head coach. But who knows? Who knows? I mean, his official title is the interim head coach. That means like there's an active search happening. It doesn't mean he can't be the head coach. But we don't know anything. I'm not like, hinting at any rumors or anything. Like, there's a possibility that a new coach comes in and then we kind of go through this process again. Honestly, I think I'm more comfortable finishing out the season with Stuart Dobson than bringing in a fantastic head coach who has a different play style, who might need different players, right? Like, we have a system. It's worked. I think it's better to stick with a coach that knows the system and has been around for a little while, than to bring in a totally new guy. That's just I don't know. I'm not a professional soccer player. I don't really know how
I agree.
this thing works. It just seems like it's the more logical conclusion for at least the remainder of the season. There's not much left, right?
It depends on who's available immediately and who would be available of their candidate pool at a certain time. If you need somebody, if you can get somebody to come in and this is like, the top person available in your budget, all that kind of stuff, and they're available now, sure. If they're not, I just like you said, I have absolutely no problem with Stuart Dobson seeing it out. I think that he knows the system as well as anybody can. He has been here all the time that Neil Collins has been here and longer.
Much longer.
So like, I'm not sure what else we could ask for in that sense. It's a transition from goalkeeping to from goalkeeper coach to head coach for sure. But let's let the team turn this around. I'm sure that they will. And I'm gonna give Stuart Dobson more than just the benefit of the doubt on this one because I think he deserves it, and B, if you do know the system, then you already have that leg up because that's what they've been doing. So that's my opinion on it. And unless you've got anything else, I'm good to go to the man of the match.
No, that's it. You summarized it best there. Like, there's no, just like for anybody that's out there, that's like, I mean, I saw a lot more than a few people being like it's over, like we're done, we're washed, it's over. And Neil Collins just left, like, deep breath. It's okay. Things are going to work out. Stuart Dobson is a fantastic coach. There's a reason he's been here for so long. He wouldn't have been if he wasn't a good coach. He was thrown into that interim role because, the ownership believes in him. Everybody believes in him and the team. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But I fully believe that as of now, it seems like the logical decision is to keep him in there for a little while. To put it, very, very, I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Give him time, and I'm sure we'll be back. We're still in second place in the conference, James. We have a bit of wiggle room in terms of, where we need to end up, I guess, at the end of the season. So I'm fine. I'm comfortable. We have a fantastic team, and that's all that really matters and all you need to win the USL championship.
Yep, that's true. Speaking of that fantastic team, Carlos, let's go to it. Who was your man of the match for this one? And give us why.
Dalgaard Lasso. I'm I don't really have much reason. He had a decent game. That was more than I could say about most of the team on this particular night. He didn't mess up that much. He did pretty well to track back on Enzo Martinez. Ultimately, Enzo Martinez was a little bit faster, which makes sense for Lasso's size. But I think Lasso was key in keeping the game as close as it was. Lasso and Sparrow have been having pretty good performances recently, combining for a great defensive showings, even though there hasn't been a ton of shutouts. It's fine. He's been playing well, and he deserved a man of the match, in my opinion, because he played well. He hasn't gotten many of these throughout the season, so I think he deserves one every once in a while for the kind of player he is, kind of man he is. Played well. Again, played better than I think most of the team, so my man of the match, obviously.
Speaking of someone who played better than most of the team, I am going to name my man of the match as Sebastian Dalgaard. I think that he did well in his running all day, and most importantly, I think that when we did get into attacking positions, ultimately he was the one who was creating the room for those with his off-the-ball movement, and then it was very unfortunate in 2 or 3 situations in the first half, 4 or 5 overall, when Sebastian Dalgaard was wide open, waiting for a perfect opportunity to get a good shot or to get a good cross off, and it never came to him because of the pass from the previous player. So none of that comes down ultimately to Sebastian Dalgaard. When Dayon Harris came on, he switched over to the left side, and he still did pretty well over there. I think that it was his running mostly and his effort in this past game that really elevated him for me. He passed the eye test, is the way that I would put it. But yeah, he was another player that, in a game when not too many people stood out, he looked fine. So Sebastian Dalgaard is my man of the match. Now, Carlos, we have to preview a game here, but before we do, could you tell us if there's anything going on related to the game? Like, is there something that people might want to attend?
Yeah, there's something like that going on. I have a little note here about a watch party, RBLR Sports watch party. RBLR Rowdies hosting a watch party at none other than Berry House Beer Company right off the Ybor Strip. It's going to be a blast. We did it pretty recently, and it was a great success. A lot of y'all showed up, and it was a good time. I was out of the country, and I was kind of sad that I couldn't be at my own podcast's watch party. But hey, there's a second one, which means the first one was great, which means the second one's going to be even better. There's not much else to say other than the Rowdies are playing. We're going to have a blast at Berry House Co. There's a halftime swag giveaway, free swag. Who doesn't love that? Tons of beer specials. I'm hearing rumors that there might be an announcement of a couple more beer specials on the way. Not just to spoil anything. There's a couple of rumors out there. James, what more could you want? There'll be a 6:15 p.m. live pregame show with none other than myself and James, and we're going to have a great, great time getting ready to watch none other than your Tampa Bay Rowdies against the Indianapolis 11. That's such a weird name, by the way, Indy 11. We'll be playing Indy 11, 7 p.m. game time will be the start of the match. And yeah, there's just going to be a ton of stuff to do. The boys are going to be on the field. We're going to be at Berry House drinking beer for a very reasonable price. It's going to be a blast, James. What else do we have to say about it? You have anything you want to say?
I don't have anything else to say about the watch party other than get there. Get yourself there. We're going to cut the expletives and just say, get yourself to the watch party because it's going to be a good time. And we're trying to make it a thing. And the way that you make it a thing more and more is you make it as fun as you can. So that's what we're aiming to do.
Yep. Hey, all right. Look, if we're doing a second one, it means the first one was fun. The second one's going to be even more fun.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Now, Carlos, makes sense. If you could lead us through the preview for this game for which we are having another watch party.
This Saturday at 7 p.m., the Tampa Bay Rowdies go up to the home of the Indy 500, Indianapolis, Indiana. Cool city, by the way. Was there on the way to Louisville for the conference championship back during COVID. Really, really cool city, surprisingly. Lots to do. The Rowdies will be playing them at 7 p.m. start time. We dropped, quote unquote, kind of to second in the East. We were kind of already in second on goal differential, but now we are actually in second, not tied on points anymore with the first place team. We have 34 points and the game in hand, though. 4 points behind first place. Our opposition, the Indy 11, sit in 8th place with 21 points in the game in hand over us. They have 1 win in their last 5 games against the worst team in the East. By the way, I didn't know Hartford was the worst team in the East, but apparently they are. Hartford is not great. That was Indy's last win in their last 5 games. They will line up in a 3-4-3 for the most part with Yannick Odell in net, Gustavo Rizzi, Dispe, and Macaulay King have been starting at the back with Robbie Dambrot and Yunus Boudadi as the wingbacks. Cam Lidley and Aiden Quinn will play in the center with 2 of either Solomon Asante, Douglas Martinez, Roberto Molina, or Harrison Roble on the wing. The starting central striker, by the way, has continued to be none other than a name you might be familiar with, Sebastian Guenzati. He has 3 goals and 2 assists in 2023. Quinn has 6 goals and 1 assist, while Brian Rebellon and Jack Blake, also a former Rowdy, by the way, have 2 goals. Martinez and Bodadi have 2 assists this season. I miss Jack Blake. That's a name I didn't realize was on Indy 11, by the way, until I just went through that. Hope he's doing well, except for Saturday. Their wingbacks and wingers have been heavily involved in the attack. Martinez and Bodadi creating the most big chances. Cam Lindley has the most chances created. Indy appears to have a lot of former stars with makings of a solid defense as well. More tactical information to come in James's famous weekly preview articles. Go check that out, of course. And in our pregame show, which again is happening at the Watch Party in Berry House Beer Company with tons of beer specials and free merch giveaway. That'll be a good time. Come watch us talk about the Rowdies. Give your input too, right? I mean, you're going to be there. It'll be a good time to discuss as a group, as a collective, what's going through our heads ahead of this game. I have a lot going through my head. I could talk about this game for a little bit. I've been excited. Zadi's on the other side. He's wearing checkered, whatever, blue and black. What a weird jersey they have over there. That being said, it's going to be a good game. We'll see how it goes. I feel pretty good about it. I think we can pull out a win. Indy's not particularly great right now. They have a lot of good players, similar to Birmingham, a team that, if you look at the roster, has a chance to be better than they are, to put it lightly, right? I think that's an easy way of putting it without getting too much into the tactical weeds. They have a lot of good players. That being said, they can kind of blow up at any time, right? When you have that many good players, it can happen. Let's make sure it's not this Saturday. James, prediction. What's going through your head? What's your result prediction going to be for this Saturday night against the Indianapolis 11 in Indianapolis, home of the Indy 500?
Yeah, I think that this will be. Oh man, this is a tough one because obviously we've just had a rough result. I'm expecting that we do come back from this one. I don't think that Indy 11 have it in them. They're currently in a playoff position, but that's pretty much by the skin of their teeth. It should be noted we have conceded 20 goals all season. We have a game in hand over the Eastern Conference leader. They have a game in hand on us, so they have played 1 fewer game, but they've conceded 1 more goal. We're kind of even defensively. I mean, if you take literally, the goal that we gave up against Birmingham, it would be just a little more different, but not that much, not that much.
Right.
So we're pretty much even that way. I think that they have a strong defense, but I don't think that they have any offensive output. It would be a little bit similar overall to us last week if we can put a little bit too fine a point on it. I'm going to say, like I said, that we do come back, and I'm going to give the Rowdies a 2-0 win in this one.
Valid. I think we win as well. I'm going to go ahead and just say that really quickly. Safe result. I usually go with a prediction when I feel a win, but I'm not super confident about it. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a draw, so I'm going to say a 2-1 win for none other than your Tampa Bay Rowdies. I just feel that it would be very typical, and it likely will happen that Sebastian Guenzati scores like a banger against us, or is otherwise involved in said Indianapolis goal, like he was.
That would be sad, but not surprising.
Yeah, I mean, it happened in the first game, unfortunately. We saw how that played out. If you can recall, think all the way back to that first game of the season.
I remember just how pissed Aaron Guillen was.
Yeah, no, and drawing that penalty. You remember where we were at the beginning of the season? We thought the world was over for the first few games. And now we're here talking about how let's give the team some space because we're really good. We're too good. Just everybody take a step back. That was right before this winning streak started, or this unbeaten streak, which is crazy to think about. Feels like a long time ago. 2-1 Rowdies, my prediction. Sebastian Gonzalez definitely scores a goal or gets an assist. I've been waiting for a Jordan Doherty goal, like a kind of shot from the outside. So I'm going to keep saying Jordan Doherty scores a goal. He'll score a goal this game, and JJ Williams gets another header. 2-1 Rowdies win.
Okay, well, there you go. Producer Eureka has also weighed in. He is predicting a 1-1 draw for this one. So if we get that, everybody knows who to blame. And the guest spot this week goes to Chris Glazer at The Only TP, I believe, on Instagram. And he has also predicted a Rowdies win 2-1, just like you, Carlos. So I hope for my sake that you guys do not get the score right. But either way, that is how it shakes out for us. Carlos,
Yes.
there are a couple things to get through in our extra time segment. So first, I want to say congratulations go out to Mexico on winning the CONCACAF Gold Cup. I also boo them. I was really hoping it would either be Jamaica or Panama. When only Panama got to the final, then I was like, well, it's up to them to win it.
Yeah.
And just as I predicted ahead of time, they did not have the offensive output themselves. So Mexico just waited and waited and waited, and they eventually got their chance and they scored and they won.
Well,
that is their ninth overall, and none of us is really all that happy about it.
That was, with all due respect to my predecessor on this show, Leo Santos, that was the worst outcome when it comes to the Final Four. Obviously, I wanted the U.S. to win, but after that, Jamaica or Panama deserved a title so bad. Jamaica had been playing. Watching that Jamaica-Mexico game was so frustrating because Jamaica has a better team. Jamaica has a better team than Mexico, and they came out scared. They came out like as if they were a much inferior team. They came out like trying to play on the counterattack. They didn't impose themselves at all in that game. They never played with any like sort of possession or any sort of game plan. That's a situation where you might look at the coach and be like, what the hell, coach? I mean, it has something to do with the game plan. They just didn't come out for the win. And after that, Mexico just ran away with it easily. The Panama-Mexico final was a really good game, though. Panama had their chances. Ismael Diaz, who I claim is an honorary Ecuadorian because he plays for La U Católica in Quito, had more than a few chances to put the goal away. I know
just needed to.
Yeah, I know my Ecuadorian Twitter mutuals who never watched Gold Cup or CONCACAF stuff were really into the game, obviously, because we had one of the better players in the Ecuadorian league kind of representing and showing out in the CONCACAF final. Ultimately, Mexico got the game winner, and it was still a good game, though. So, whatever. Congrats to Mexico, I guess. Like, I feel like it doesn't. Whatever. I have my opinions on the Gold Cup as a competition. That is for another episode as a whole. Yeah, that's it. James, next point. What we got?
First of all, make it every 4 years, but regardless. Now, there is, as we said, a gigantic competition that starts this Thursday. It starts, unfortunately, at 3 a.m., but such is the nature of things. The Women's World Cup is later this week in Australia and New Zealand. So that's, I mean, I feel like a lot of people have said it snuck up on us. It kind of did, but I feel like it also kind of has to do with the time zone, because obviously a lot of these games we are going to have to either be up very early for or stay up pretty late for. Just so you're aware, the first game is New Zealand at 3 a.m, but the second game is Australia at 6 a.m. So if you get up a little early, or maybe you want to get up a little bit earlier, my wife and I will be doing that because Australia has sold out, I think, the biggest stadium in the whole competition for this one. They moved it to a larger stadium because the ticket sales were so awesome. So congratulations to them. But yeah, I'm super, super excited on this one. And I just want to say for everyone listening, look out for watch parties. And while we're on the subject of watch parties, before I turn it over to Carlos, I'm going to give one more plug to our own watch party, which is going to be at Berry House this Saturday.
Berry House.
Please show up. We are having our pregame show starting at 6:15, and as we've stated already, there's a halftime swag giveaway. There are beer pitcher specials, all this stuff right here. And it is at Berry House off the Ybor Strip. So if you want to have fun afterwards, you can do that too. But it's going to be a great time. Now, Carlos, you had some points here that I wanted to turn
I
it over to
did.
you for.
BBR, Beers, Berry House, Rowdies. Good weekend. James, I just want to throw this in here too because I like talking about the wider world of American soccer and what's going on in the world of American soccer. This past weekend, like I mentioned earlier, a mutual of mine, a student at my university, who killed it last year as a freshman, by the way, had a great season as a freshman. Keep an eye out for this kid, Jacob Morel. He's been playing in the summer for Annapolis Blues, first season of existence in the NPSL. And they broke the NPSL attendance record. This past weekend, they drew 8,480 people. I mean, that's crazy. I loved seeing that. 8,500 people at this Annapolis Blues game, NPSL, 4th Division, semi-pro.
That's
It's
awesome.
It's awesome. Like, this has kind of been my point for a little while. Like, Annapolis just did it right. The Blues, like, they had great marketing. They've been pushing it out well. And even, like, this is my point. Like, people like soccer in the U.S. People think, like, it's not a soccer. People like soccer. Even in these smaller cities like Annapolis, Maryland, 8,500 people showed up to watch a 4th Division team. It kind of goes into my next point, James. I'm kind of I know this is a crazy soccer wars like take on Twitter, but I just wanted to give a shout out to Annapolis Blues and Jacob for scoring the equalizer in stoppage time to send them to penalties to eventually win the conference final. 8,500 people, 4th Division. That's awesome. That's really cool. Great for them, and great for the country. Kind of shows where we're at, and kind of goes into my next point of why I'm happy about this next thing that's happening that I'm going to mention, and I'm going to say it quickly because we're running a little bit long. We didn't mention this last episode, right? I'm not making this up. You see the notes I have here, James, right? This little part right here.
No, I don't believe that this was something that we talked about.
A little piece of news. Promotion and relegation is a thing that exists in most countries, except like Australia and the US in the worlds of professional soccer. And for whatever reason, we've never really had it here. It's just been kind of the norm. It's not really how it works here. That being said, there could be a relatively monumental vote coming up in in Colorado Springs on August 9th. The USL Board of Governors will be meeting, and the USL owners will vote on whether they should implement the promotion and relegation system into the USL leagues. That being said, there's been no kind of discussion about what that would look like. It would likely include adding another division in another professional division, either between the USL Championship or USL League One, or USL League Two becomes, I don't know. You'd have to like add another division so that there's 3 divisions, professional soccer with promoting and relegating teams. It would be the first time that a professional soccer league in this country has promotion and relegation. Historic. And it goes back to my point with kind of the reason I brought up Annapolis in the first place. Annapolis, Maryland. Who, like, with all due respect to the Naval Academy, who really cares about Annapolis, Maryland? It doesn't really. Nobody thinks about Annapolis, and yet they're drawing near 9,000 people for a 4th Division game. Like, that's where we're at, where if we have a field that can hold enough people in important games in smaller cities even, right? Like, stadiums can fill up, and small teams in small cities can fill up if they have a reason to play. This is exciting to me, James. I don't really care about what your like opinions in the U.S. soccer world are about promotion relegation. I saw someone call it like a gimmick, an MLS person call it a gimmick. I don't even like. At the end of the day, if you ignore like your moral stance on promotion and relegation, this gives a lot more teams something to play for.
Yeah.
Like just very concretely a position to move up, right? The prize of not moving down, right? Like things mean a lot more when more is at stake. And that, if it gets implemented, and I hope it does, would be fantastic. And hopefully this goes back to my moral stance on promotion and relegation. Hopefully eventually it leads into a integrated system in this country. I won't hold my breath though. But we can start with the USL. That would be a blast. It would be so much fun. Obviously, until your team gets relegated, but that's kind of the nature of the thing, right? That's the nature of the game, and at least you'd be playing for something, even if you're towards the bottom. Like, imagine like an Annapolis USL team, like, drawing 8,000 people in a promotion playoff game to get to the second division or something like that. That's awesome. That's kind of what soccer is in my head, and the beauty of it. If we can bring that to the US at least a little bit, I think we're already on the track of growing the game here and making it as great as possible. This takes us up, it kicks it up a notch. The competition gets better. Things mean more. It's just going to be a blast, and I hope it happens. I really do.
The logistics would be tough to work out, but I am I'm not going to certainly be the person online that you find I don't know. There's so many weird takes online, so I'll just leave it there and be like, I'm gonna wait for the news to come out, and then we'll determine what follows that.
I loved Mike Pendleton actually had a tweet.
He's so
earlier today. Yeah, it was either earlier today or yesterday, and he said something that kind of summarized you can't talk about this kind of stuff on Twitter. Like, promotion and relegation in the US, especially like as a system, like, merits much more conversation than the characters on Twitter can allow. And I'm trying to find this tweet. He said something like podcast idea, a normal conversation about soccer. Concept: we take the most heated partisan topic of the day in American soccer and compete to try to have the most normal takes about it. Challenge level impossible. It summarizes the world of US soccer on Twitter. People have insane takes about even promotion relegation. People just have insane, like, extremist takes either way.
Yeah.
Just take a deep breath. Think about it logically. Like, you can say it's a gimmick, and that's fine. Like, I'll give you the benefit. I'll agree with you, just, for the sake of agreeing with you. I'll say it's a gimmick too, but it's a gimmick that'll make things more fun. That's it. Promotion relegation.
All right. Well, on that note, we are going to leave it there. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We always appreciate when you do, but we did so much today. We talked about a lot, and interspersed it with all of our ads for our upcoming watch party, which you have got to attend.
Very awesome.
Please follow RBLR Sports if you want to get all of the news on our watch party and everything else. We are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I think we're on Mastodon, Threads, wherever the hell you are, we are too. Please check us out at RBLR Sports on all of those things. You can also get me. I'm only on Twitter pretty much. I am at RBLR James K. What about you, Carlos?
At Carlos TPA10 on Twitter. I exclusively tweet out Rowdies propaganda these days, and occasionally insane takes about Georgetown basketball, about how we're going to win the national championship, which will totally happen. It's also my Instagram. I don't think I've ever said that, but Carlos TPA10 is also my Instagram. I occasionally post Rowdy stuff over there. And that's it. Come follow me on social media. And as always, I love fielding some questions from our listeners on Twitter and on the podcast. Ask RBLR, hashtag Ask RBLR. Always a good place to throw in your thoughts and questions. Maybe think ahead to next week and the game, leading up after next week. Shoot us our questions, and we'll love to talk about it on the show.
Absolutely. Please also like and subscribe to our podcast. We are on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, everything else. And by the way, if you want to watch us, you can do that too. Get the full experience on YouTube. But for another week in the bag, another game coming up, and a watch party on the way. Come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.